What's going on YouTube? Username Kite562 here of Kite562 Books and Manga Reviews, and I have a review for you all of Junji Ito's autobiography, Uncanny, The Origins of Fear. Just get a nice little thumbnail going here, so as always, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content on this channel. So let's get on with my review of Uncanny by Junji Ito. Now, this book is an autobiography by Mr. Ito and his experience of becoming the horror master that we all know and love today. In this short 5-chapter story, we see Junji Ito's bits of childhood to who he is now, and we also get to see more details of his life as a dental technician within this autobiography book. So let's get on with my detailed notes. Chapter 1. This chapter starts at the very beginning. Junji Ito as a child growing up in Sakashita with his big family of 7 people. Mom, dad, 2 older sisters, and 2 aunts, 1 younger and 1 older. So it's filled with small but vivid memories. From his father's surprising artistic side to a hilarious and eerie underground toilet story that really stuck with me on page 29. It really brought a smile to my face. And one of the more heartwarming takeaways from this chapter was learning that Ito didn't just start with horror. He tried parody manga, again with the toilet story. So creating a manga version of Fantastic Voyage called Fantastic Toilet, like I mentioned before, that really still had me smiling to this day. So, continuing on, the scenes with his friends H-kun and I-kun drawing manga together and supporting each other were especially touching. And the Hospital of Horror scenes where Junji gets appendicitis in his early teen years was really relatable in so many ways, but I'm not going to go into detail here. And I have to say my favorite quote from chapter 1, the fact that I was drawn to his work all on my own, no doubt, means that I felt something special in it right from the start, and that's when his sisters introduced him to Kazuo Umeza's work, Mummy Teacher, when he was just 3 years old, and he ended up loving it and ended up being drawn to it. No pun intended. And so continuing on, chapter 2. This chapter dives into Ito's early career struggles, working as a dental technician while still chasing his dream of becoming a full-time manga artist. It also includes some early panels of Tomie and Biohouse, and even a funny comparison between his villain and his boss at the dental lab, meaning the villain from Biohouse really looked a lot like his dental technician in real life, and that just caused a really hilarious fiasco within this autobiography, which had me smiling from ear to ear. So, but what really made this chapter hit harder was the way Ito reflects on the loss of a close friend, Keikun. These reflections are structured like a little window snapshots or vignettes even within this story. Like, you have the title of the subject bolded in this dark blue, and then these really tiny bits of info on the blue pages within the book itself. So, but those were still really challenging for me to read. But you also get to see concept art from Mr. Ito in this story, like concept art of Miss Fucci and many other stories, but I'll leave that to you to discover. And I have to say my favorite quote from chapter 2. However, I was really only doing pencil drawings in a small A5 sized notebook, so it was less serious than my work up to that point, page 87. Meaning this was his time in high school where he'd just draw random ideas in his spare time with his friends just to critique one another, or it could have been his time as a dental technician in college. But I have to say that quote captures something honest about creativity. It's not always about serious, but it's still meaningful practice or work in a way. You know, just to get your creative juices flowing, as I like to see it. Chapter 3. This chapter reveals where some of Ito's unforgettable stories came from, without spoiling any of them. What's fascinating is how he pulls horror from the everyday, like his fear of sharks influencing one of his most grotesque stories being Fashion Model and Fashion Model Cursed Frame, or Gyo in this instance. And so, like influencing one of his more grotesque stories, his inspiration is often simple: a visual fear or a weird what if. It reminds me of Joe Murray's how-to book, creating cartoons with character, or creating animation with cartoons with character, something like that. I have the book on my shelf, but I'll also leave a picture of it up here in the corner. So yeah, I do reference that book a lot. And so, but as I'm continuing on, Ito's raw sketches and concept ideas show how stories grow from a flicker of thought into something haunting and full of life. Chapter 4. This chapter explores how some of Ito's iconic characters were created. For example, Fuchi, a horrifying yet oddly compelling character, was inspired between a shark and a fashion model here. So, that contrast between beauty and terror is classic Junji Ito in my eyes. He also talks about how character design often starts with a bizarre question, like, with Slug Girl, for instance, he wondered, what if the tongue was a slug? And then that image would form the story itself, and he'd go from there with his artistic process. Ito also shares a bit of creative advice here about horror isn't always external. He believes that terror is already inside all of us here. His stories just reach in and pull it out. So, Chapter 5. In this final chapter, Ito reflects on how he builds imagery that lingers, images that are instantly disturbing and unforgettable. He goes into why he makes manga the way he does, and how the impact of a single panel can do more than pages of explanation. And on that example, if you notice with Uncanny itself, it's a dust jacket. Let me quickly slip it off here. And it ends up looking like this. Really nice. And it's an image of Bizo, I think it was. I know he's from The Mystery of the Haunted House, Soichi's version. But this is how the main dust jacket looks. And there's the spine. Uncanny. I just really love this kind of page-turner surprise kind of deal. So back to my notes here. He even includes preview panels of unreleased stories like Layers of Fear. I know that short story was animated in the Netflix Maniac animation, but I prefer his manga works by far. So, and his description of Tomie as the ultimate narcissist really took the cake for me, and again, that review of mine will be popping up here soon on this channel on October 3rd, 7 p.m. And so for my final thoughts on Uncanny, The Origins of Fear is not just a behind-the-scenes look at Junji Ito's work, it's a soft, eerie, and often funny journey through his life and mind. It's filled with little moments that will stay with you, even if you've never read his manga before. If you've been curious about how Junji Ito thinks, creates, or finds inspiration, this book is 100% worth reading here. So, my final rating is an 8.9 out of 10. A thoughtful, personal, and surprisingly warm story in some ways, and it just really highlights how wonderful Junji Ito is as a person, and really shows how terror can be discovered by us all in one way or another. So I highly I highly recommend you all read Uncanny, The Origins of Fear. This is Kite562 of Kite562 Books and Manga Reviews signing out, and as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, everybody. Later.